Now Inside Out with Chris Jackson.
Tonight, it was the worst flooding in Morpeth's history. A month on, we'll be piecing together what happened and asking if the town could have been better prepared.
They said, we'll have to prioritise things, and I said, how much of a priority is the bloody river in my house?
We'll hear from some of the hundreds left homeless.
Once I saw the water coming in the house, that's when my tears started, because I realised everything's about to be wrecked.
And from those who battled to protect the town and its people.
The speed, the impact and the devastation that the water levels caused, we simply didn't have enough people on the ground to deal with.
I think it's more good luck rather than good management that there weren't lives lost.
Stories from the heart of the North East and Cumbria. This is Inside Out. September the 6th, 2008.
Sadly, the weather is making headlines for all the wrong reasons today. Low pressure sitting on top of the UK. Heaviest rain today will be through North Wales and Northern England in particular. That's where the Met Office has severe weather warnings in force.
I felt something, that a premonition, if you like, that worse was to come. If you are somebody who's lived in Morpeth for a long time and has been close to the river, I think you know when it's going to be bad, and it definitely had that feel on that Saturday morning.
And he was right. The weather was worsening and it was clear this was not going to be an ordinary day. Using pictures you've sent us, film made by the editor of the Morpeth Herald, film from the emergency services and our own footage, we'll tell you the whole story of what happened that day.
Through the Friday in that 24-hour period, we had 80 millimetres of rainfall. The Saturday then followed that up with another 70-odd millimetres of rain, an incredible amount of stress to put on any river system.
About to face one of the most challenging days of his career, Ian Hodge from the Environment Agency takes an early look at the river.
There's approximately 1,000 properties at risk of flooding in the town centre if it continues to rise. At the minute, there's around about 10 or 15 affected. We're quite hopeful that levels don't rise a great deal more than what we can see now. The main concern that we have is if the water level continues to rise beside us on the high stanners, then evacuation becomes very difficult because the water's too deep to move vehicles in and out.
But that's exactly what did happen. At 11:26, a severe flood warning telling the people of High Stanners to leave home.
This is a recorded message from the Environment Agency. Flooding of homes and businesses is expected in your area.
Meanwhile, across on the other side of the river, Mitford Road is one of the first areas to flood. Resident Jeff Parker has to take action. When did you start to realise that this was it, this was going to happen?
I think around the time that the agency gave out the severe flood warning, which was late morning, then we realised that something significant was really going to happen, and then we started to move furniture and carpets upstairs and our most precious belongings.
At that stage, there was water coming into the first of the houses at the end of the Aldgate Bridge, bed and breakfast establishment, and they were preparing to evacuate houses in the Challiners Gardens area, where the vast majority of the residents are pensioners.
So the Environment Agency man had made his decision. He'd advised the emergency services to start evacuating parts of town.
We expect the river to keep rising over the next 3 to 4 hours, so the levels are becoming really critical. We've now started to evacuate the High Stanners area, and we're considering further actions for the town as a greater part.
Was that enough time?
It's probably as much time as we could have possibly given under the circumstances.
If you notice a river that rises quickly, then surely you do it earlier, don't you? It's not that simple?
We should, but evacuation has quite an impact on people's lives, as you might imagine. Morpeth is a busy town centre. It was a Saturday when the shops were open and business was flowing. Then we can have an impact and maybe cry wolf once too often. So we do have to have that balance between being absolutely certain that a flood is upon us, or, and giving proper, appropriate advice, and then not giving it too often such that people just take no notice of it.
Well, we've got a flooding situation on High Stanners and Morpeth. As you can see, the bridge is about to flood, and we think the water's going to go lateral and flood all the houses. And we have some elderly people who need rescuing, so we're in the process of rescuing those people.
And the floods come. In the next 12 hours, swathes of Morpeth disappear in the deluge.
We've got about 45 hectares now involved in closing the bridge and evacuating the residents.
How do you feel today?
Very old.
But was it good to see the rescue teams coming?
Oh, definitely. They're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Very good job.
Yeah.
Just yards away, on the other side of the river on Mitford Road, there's no rescue underway. Confusion is leading to anger.
I rang the council, probably for about the 6th or 7th time, to say, look, the sandbags were far too late, the water had risen, it was in the house, and I says, could you at least get the police here to stop the vehicles coming up the street, the 4x4s particularly, because they were causing a huge wash, and it was going right through the doors. And then they said, well, we'll have to prioritise things, and I says, well, how much of a priority is the bloody river in my house?
Soon the flood water begins to reach other parts of Morpeth, including the town centre.
I could see the river coming up from the tea room window, and the standers were shut off. Some of the staff wanted to go home and asked if I could give them a lift, so we shut the shop. I took them home, saw how bad it was, put the money away and went home. There was nothing I could do. I knew by that time what we were about to get.
The water level is still continuing to rise. We're seeing now flooding of the south end of the main street, and we expect that to get worse over the next couple of hours. The police and the fire brigade are working with us to evacuate people.
Back near the town centre, a major evacuation exercise is underway. By now, the town's emergency plans are really being put to the test. But what is becoming clear is there simply aren't enough sandbags, and the rescue teams are forced to improvise.
If they didn't get the sandbags, again, I come back, I regret that was not the case, but and were unable to respond. The reality is there wouldn't have been a lot of good to a lot of people there. Had we known there wouldn't be any good to people, we'd have told them.
Most people are leaving their homes, but in the centre of town, one couple, Sissy and Joe Schubert, are determined that they should stay put. Concerned about their safety, rescuers remain outside their house. The police keep an eye on the situation from a helicopter above the scene.
They're both in their 80s, and they decided to tough it out and stay in the upstairs flat.
As these pictures show, the water in other areas of town is rising terrifyingly fast.
Within about 10 minutes it was right up to the door. Everyone's just getting out, you're not even bothered, people aren't even bothering moving the furniture.
My husband knocked on the window to the passing rescue crew and said, can you come and get my wife and daughter out? We had to wade through the water, it was up over my wellies by this point. And the rescue boat came to pick us all up, complete with our little dog as well, and a couple of my neighbours as well, and took us down the street back towards the Old Gate Bridge where there was a rescue bus waiting for us.
A specialist rescue team from Tyne and Wear Fire Service arrives around 12:30 to help in the evacuation.
The first time we put the boat in, it was quite an easy rescue because the water level was probably waist deep. By the end of that rescue, the water had risen till chest deep, and then we needed the engine on the boat, and after that the water was probably 12 to 15 foot in places of high standers. We actually rescued somebody from the first floor with a ladder onto the boat, and it became very dynamic for about 8 hours of continuing rescue and working in conjunction with a search and rescue helicopter to decide who was a priority, who needed rescuing, because with the area we're working in actually became an island surrounded totally by water, so no other resources could come in to assist us at the time.
A major incident was called around about 4 p.m. when it became clear that we were dealing with something significant that would require the evacuation of large numbers of people and effective coordination of all the partner agencies that were involved.
Every emergency rescuer is fully committed. But even with such extraordinary courage, it's clear not everyone could be helped, especially in the Middle Greens area.
It was just total chaos. Everything went that quickly, from the water coming in each end of the house at the same time. We just had to get out.
By late afternoon, the emergency services are at full stretch. Lives are at risk.
We were getting calls from members of the public
report elderly relatives or relatives that needed medication or other medical help, which we're able to prioritise. So through good communications, through use of our radio communications, we're able to divert the resources to those as they became reported to us. Then we had other resources we could bring in, which was the RAF helicopter from Boomer.
When we got there, it was completely underwater. Although we could see people waving who obviously needed moving, they might not have been, you know, the person having a heart attack inside a building that we couldn't see. So we lowered our winchman down, who swapped radios with one of the RNLI crews down there, and that's how we established our first sort of communication, and then picked up our first bits of tasking, which were picking people up from rooftops and, you know, moving them to safety.
Back in their upstairs flat, Sissy and Joe are still reluctant to leave.
What happened was the helicopter guy smashed the window and tried to get them to evacuate. They really didn't want to.
Morpeth has a long history of flooding, and according to its emergency plans, should have had these 18 pleasure boats on standby to help in a crisis. But today, when they were really needed, they're full of floodwater and no use at all to rescuers.
Yet again, we were caught by speed. The speed of the water flow meant that those boats were underwater, inaccessible, before we had the chance to deploy them to where they might be best used. Yet there are lessons there.
I mean, people might think, you know, it's starting to flood. The first thing you need to rescue are the boats.
It may well be. Hindsight's a great thing. If we'd had more people, we would probably put them down there initially to move the boats, make sure they were in a safe location so they can be used. The reality is people were knocking doors trying to evacuate people from their homes, and that was a priority.
After the recent floods in Yorkshire, every fire service was given money to buy a rescue boat, but Northumberland still haven't got theirs. So as we've seen, they've had to call in a team from a neighbouring force. That's supported by other vessels, including boats from the RNLI and another from an unlikely source.
Friends from the RSPCA flood rescue team arrived with the boats to rescue some of the elderly people out in the house. Rodney and Eileen next door were brought out by the rescue team.
So it was animal welfare people who came to the aid of humans on this street?
Yeah, absolutely.
Despite the heroic efforts of rescue services elsewhere, in Middle Greens there's still no one around.
Flood just came in, we had no warnings, no help whatsoever. Me and my pals, Mark here, he knew there was a boat in the allotments, so he went and got it. We brought the boat down the streets, got the elderly out, got disabled people out, and just made trips up and down, getting people out, basically.
And Andrew and his mates aren't alone.
When I got to Reed Street, there was a lady who lives on the end. She had a couple of dogs and she wanted assistance because it was too deep. It was up to her chest. So I just said, jump in, I'll push you around. So I took her around to Noble Terrace where it wasn't as bad, where it was dry, and she just got out there.
In all, John rescues 20 people. The flooding is now unprecedented in Morpeth's history. Just look at the force of the water carrying this car.
Good evening. Severe weather has caused flash flooding across many parts of England and Wales. Tonight, the worst affected areas are in the northeast of England, especially the town of Morpeth in Northumberland.
Back near the town centre, Sissy and Joe are still unwilling to leave their top floor flat. But rescuers are insistent. They force the front door and manage to persuade them to leave, reluctantly.
All right. Are you pleased to get out of there anyway?
No.
You wanted to stay in your house. At the same time, though, I mean, you have to get to safety, which is the most important thing.
Yes, that's true.
And the guys have been doing a very good job, well, have they?
They've done a good job, yes.
Many of those rescued are taken to an emergency shelter set up at a local school.
We've got about 100 people in the rest centre this evening. They're all people who've been made homeless this afternoon because of the flooding in the centre of Morpeth. We've been providing hot drinks and food for people who've been evacuated here this evening. We weren't sure this afternoon when we started how quickly people would be able to go home. The way it has happened, it looks like people will be here overnight.
The fact that there were no fatalities in that incident, the fact that there were no reports of any serious injuries to any of our staff or, to my knowledge, any of the staff of the support agencies means for me that the incident, from a fire and rescue service perspective, was a huge success.
By Sunday morning, it's clear just how bad the damage has been and how miraculous lives had not been lost. Remember that car? Just look where it's ended up. The water has receded, but it's left a layer of thick, contaminated mud, rendering useless everything it's covered.
Today's sort of hit home the mess it's in, and it's going to take a long time to put right, I think. So I think we're feeling worse today than we did when it happened.
The whole house is absolutely destroyed. My suite, my television, I've got Sky, everything's broken. They'll have to be all replaced. It's unbelievable. I feel sorry for everybody what lives around here. It's just totally a shambles.
Around 2,000 people had been forced to sleep away from their homes, 900 houses and 90 businesses destroyed.
Well, we've lost quite a bit of stock. The water got to about 18 inches, possibly 2 foot in places. And anything that was below that was wrecked. I was not amused.
It's done a lot of damage to the garage, basically electrical equipment, the lifts, the roller brake testers. The office has been totally devastated, paperwork. We luckily managed to get the 2 computers out into the back of my brother's car, and he managed to get them away. But it has wrecked a lot of equipment inside the garage. And it's been quite an experience, put it that way, and one we hope we don't have again.
The town's social club was badly hit. Customers had not even had time to finish their drinks before having to make their escape. Adam and his wife Lisa are lucky. They're fully insured, but it will still mean months of upheaval.
The stench is terrible. They've got so many damaged contents around the property, they just don't know what to do. We don't try to pretend that this is going to be anything other than a painful process for them. You know, they've got a young child, they're having to move out of their home, but we'll make certain that we'll have the property stripped out, and we're talking literally back to the bricks. I mean, everything's going to go in here. They've had contaminated water to quite a height. So the drying process will go on. Absolute best case might be 4 weeks, but we've certainly had cases that have gone on for many months.
Angela Sanderson's house was also wrecked by the floods, but she wasn't there to see it happen. She got stranded in the pub where she worked and had to spend the night there.
I just burst into tears, to be honest. I was really, really gutted. Couldn't get home. Spoke to Chloe on the phone. She got upset because I couldn't get home. She was worried about me. I cried quite a lot of times that night.
And to make matters worse, like 200 others, she isn't insured.
There's a lot of people that have been helping. They've got the Lions and Red Cross. They've been really good. My sister's been really good. She's trying to get stuff for us.
And as the skips start to fill, it becomes clear that the emergency call system, which should have warned everyone about the high risk of flooding, had failed. The Environment Agency's automated telephone warning system had missed the Middle Greens area of the town. The floods then took a whole estate completely by surprise.
No one could have predicted the volume of the water and how quickly it was going to rise. But the flood agency did not let us know. We didn't get a warning. We lost so much more possessions because we weren't given the opportunity to move them, and we really feel let down by the Environment Agency.
We actually issued throughout the day 45 different flood warnings. Now what happened in the event is that we were issuing around about 12 all at once. 11 of them were identified correctly on the computer screen, and it's essentially a check in a box that then issues the warning by the computer. Fortunately, one of them, the check went in the wrong box, and that meant that the warning didn't go out to Middle Greens.
So a click of the mouse is what went wrong?
It was essentially a click of the mouse in the wrong place.
I think it would have made a lot of difference if we'd had warning. Would have been able to get a lot more stuff upstairs. I would have been able to save a lot of my stuff. But because we had no warning, I managed to save nothing.
That's a devastating mistake for something seemingly simple as that.
Yeah, it is. It's terrible, and we understand the devastation that people would have experienced during that flood event.
I think the concerns that a lot of people in the Middle Greens area have is that they didn't actually see any sign of emergency services on their doorstep until it was too late.
They say they felt they were abandoned during the day. Is that fair?
I mean, except here now that they didn't have a lot of people on the ground. I suppose the big lesson for this is, as a council over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been given some credit for actually making major efficiencies, reducing staff. Reality is that makes us leaner, but when it comes to the time where you've got to be flexible and respond to major emergencies like this, it makes it very difficult.
At the time, that wasn't a problem that was apparent to that group of people. I do understand that that's become an issue, and certainly it will be our intention to carry out a full and robust debrief of the whole emergency response and hopefully learn any lessons that enable us to be even more effective in the future.
The awesome power of a river in full spate is all too plain to see here at the shattered remains of a weir about a mile or so upstream from the town centre. The question is, could more have been done to limit the floods? And were Morpeth's flood defences strong enough? When the river inundated the town, the flood level had clearly reached up to here. The problem is the town's defences are only up to here. Here's the moment of truth. The River Wansbeck spilling over the defences built after the last major flood. This, combined with the surface water, brought havoc. In just a few hours, 1 in 7 homes was flooded.
One of the main problems is this flood was such an exceptional, extreme event that it is unlikely that any defences that were built to the agency's current standards would have protected people entirely from the flood. However, any defences can protect some people. There are always people towards the edge of the flood, and anything that can reduce the extent of the flooding would have been beneficial to some people.
The defences held, but then were overwhelmed, so nothing would have stopped this flood.
I don't think it would. When we look at the scale of the flood, it was probably the worst flood in living memory. I think this will be a flood that goes down in the records for all time as being the most severe.
For now, though, the important thing is to get back to normal as quickly as possible. Some lives have been changed, possibly forever. Smales, a hardware store, had been in the town centre for generations. Tens of thousands of pounds worth of stock were destroyed, a huge range of merchandise from the mundane to the bizarre.
Well, basically it's all been mopped out over and over again and then washed down with clean water and sanitised as best we can. Where we're up to now is getting rid of all this wood and plaster out the back 1 metre high. The next plan is to dry the place out.
When you look round the shop and you see the gorilla and you see the shark's head and you see the amount of stock, it's a throwback to when perhaps your grandma and granddad were there, and it's a heartwarming store you want to go visit. In many ways that's why you want to do your best for Mr. Young to get the shop back in order for the town of Morpeth as well.
Once this happens, it kind of focuses your mind. I think we'll all just put our heads together. We'll have to sort out what we've got. I mean, this is, after all, just a shop. I mean, people have lost their houses and their possessions and everything. It's those people who really I sympathise with. We can get this back together, but we can't replace things of sentimental value, I suppose.
I used to live here in Morpeth, so I know that this is a town that prides itself on its sense of community and also its quality of life. But in less than 12 hours, untold damage was done to the leisure centre, the library, a doctor's surgery, a church, all of them vital services that people in the town rely on each and every day.
We'll be making a couple of inspection patches in the floor to look at the joists.
For hundreds of the town's residents, the disruption will inevitably last many months, whilst repair work is carried out to their damaged homes. Some are living upstairs, others have moved out altogether.
We're all living with my mum and my stepdad in a 3-bedroomed house, with the exception of my daughter and a fiancé who come down here at night to sleep to make sure that the premises are safe. And we've also got a dog here, but having the family all separated is very, very difficult.
Just as Mum and Dad were carrying the coffee table upstairs, Joe heard a strange noise.
Around 1 in 4 pupils at Morpeth's first school experienced the flooding firsthand. And teachers have been working hard to help them get over the trauma of last month, and it seems to be working.
Our TV? Yeah. Our ice cream? Yes. Our fridge? Yes. Our entire kitchen? Yes.
I was affected by the floods very badly, and my really old staircase from a long time ago, I think you are now broken.
The floors were our entire kitchen? Yes. Our carpet? Yes. And the wallpaper? Yes.
The carpet was stripped at the front. The fridge was not there. The washing machine was not there. Most things were upstairs, so it looked pretty different and empty.
We support the children by offering them the opportunity to talk. We've brought some of the children together who have shared the experience of having their home flooded, and we've given them the opportunity to share their stories.
People, when they've come back to coffee mornings here over the last 3 weeks, have said it's been a wonderful haven where they can actually meet their friends and neighbours, because it's such a disparate community now. Some people have been moved to Bedlington, to Dinnington, and there's a fear that the community won't get back together, particularly before Christmas.
I mean, I don't know what happened in the Blitz, but it must have resembled something like that. People were helping each other, they were caring for each other. Probably people that had fallen out were helping each other. It's just something I've never experienced in all my life.
Stephen Hodgson's story is typical. He gave up countless hours of his spare time to help clear up at the local vets.
I can now say in 50 years' time, oh, I was down there, I was helping. I remember, you know, digging in, helping, shifting silt, you know, doing whatever. And I know when this place is back to itself, I helped to get it to there.
The whole town has responded in remarkable ways. The appeal fund run by the local Lions Club has almost hit its target of £100,000, and cash is still pouring in, money that will go to help the uninsured and elderly.
This is unbelievable. £20 notes, all sorts of things, massive amounts of money coming, and they're coming from people. A lot of people have been flooded themselves, but what they're saying, I haven't been flooded as bad as somebody else, and here's 20 quid, you know, and that's really heartwarming, yeah.
Everyone from the council is working hard on the recovery plan, but there's still one worrying statistic.
We've got about 400 and odd people who still have not contacted us to tell us what arrangements they've made. Now that's a serious concern to us, and we've got people on the ground trying to find out the information. We're leaving messages in their house. We do need those people to contact us so that we know they're safe and being cared for.
In the Middle Greens area, residents have set up a new self-help group.
You are part of a very, very special group. You've had your homes flooded. You might wish at the end of this that you'd never, ever seen water again, but we can't do anything about it.
Residents are being encouraged to look to each other for help and support in the difficult months ahead.
Morpeth can show a lot of other places what community spirit is all about because it's already here.
There's no definitive figure yet on the final bill of the restoration of the town, but it will be counted in tens of millions of pounds.
What we're saying here now is we're campaigning to government to say we expect the full cost of the flood recovery and restoration to be met from government, and we'll campaign heavily and hard to ensure that happens. That said, we are budgeted, we're prepared, we've got everything in place to deal with our contribution to that process.
For the Environment Agency, the question now is build up more defences or invest in a massive dam upstream.
I'm anticipating at the moment the scheme is going to be in the order of around about £30 million, and we've currently got it in our programme for around about 2010 or 11. Clearly that's 2 or 3 years away still, but we are doing all that we can now to try and accelerate that programme.
For Morpeth, the next year will see a flurry of builders, decorators and no doubt rising insurance premiums. But the question we will all have to ask ourselves is, will we be better prepared next time?
As far as the future is concerned, I don't know, I wouldn't like to see this happen again, but I wouldn't like to bet that it won't.
There was no loss of life. There were very few injuries, and any injuries at that were mild. I think if we measure it by these two criteria, we were very fortunate.
That's it from Morpeth, but if you're affected by these or any other floods, then you can tell us all about your experiences on our website.